The night over the Philippine Sea carried a kind of silence that didn't feel natural. It was the silence pilots sense before a storm or before an ambush, an invisible heaviness that coiled in the lungs. For the Japanese bomber crews flying from Formosa toward the American invasion fleet around Luzon in late 1944, this silence felt comforting at first. Their commanders had assured them the skies at night were theirs. American fighters, they had insisted, were blind after sunset. The Imperial bombers would fly unchallenged, slipping through darkness, striking swift and silent like hawks. But they had no idea that a single black-painted shape had risen from an airstrip on Leyte under the cover of dusk, an aircraft the Japanese barely understood, a machine built specifically for night, one whose pilots flew like hunters rather than fighters. The Northrop P-61 Black Widow. Its crew that night consisted of 2 men. The pilot, First Lieutenant Samuel Hawkeye Lawson, was tall, wiry, with eyes that rarely blinked and a calmness that unnerved even fellow airmen. He wasn't loud or boastful. He carried himself with quiet patience, as though he were always waiting for something, an opening, a mistake, a moment when the sky offered its next prey. Behind him sat his radar operator, Technical Sergeant David Sparks Mallory, a man so gifted with electronics that other pilots joked he could repair a radio with a toothpick. Sparks wasn't a fighter by temperament. He had joined to work on machines. But the need for radar operators was urgent, and he became one of the best in the squadron. Where Lawson hunted with his eyes, Sparks hunted with screens and signals, finding ghosts the human eye could not. Their P-61, Black Widow #42-39478, was a sleek, ominous creature, matte black from nose to tail. Her engines, twin Pratt & Whitney R2800s, purred like animals waiting to pounce. On the nose, a white marking of a widow spider, legs wrapped around a web. The crew had called her Night Mercy, though no one agreed whether the name was ironic. The sun dipped, the sky fell, and the widow rose. They weren't up more than 15 minutes when Sparks leaned closer to his radar. A blip. Faint. Moving slowly. Not a fighter. Sam, Sparks murmured, voice tightening. We've got something at 45 miles, heading south-southwest. Altitude maybe 8,000. Bomber? Sam asked, banking the widow slightly. Has to be. The Japanese bomber crew they had detected, 6 men aboard a Mitsubishi P-67, never saw the P-61 approaching. The widow's radar tracked them with the precision of a predator. Sam saw the bomber's silhouette emerge from darkness only when he was already closing in behind it. Want to say hello? Sparks asked. Sam eased the throttles. Let's knock. The moment he pressed the triggers, the widow's 420mm cannons in the belly spat fire, silent flashes in the night, almost invisible except for the faint bloom of orange reflected against the bomber's fuselage. The P-67 shuddered, engines coughing. One wing drooped. Then, like a wounded animal losing its legs, it spiraled downward in silence, and became a black smear against the Philippine Sea. 1 bomber down. 20 minutes into patrol. Sparks exhaled. Sam, they're not going to believe this back at base. They don't need to, Sam replied. We're just getting started. The Japanese headquarters on Formosa wasn't aware yet. Their radar operators had lost the signal of the bomber but assumed equipment failure. They believed the Americans still lacked a real night fighter capable of reaching bomber routes. But the night wasn't finished revealing its secrets. The second bomber appeared 40 minutes later, another P-67, same direction, same altitude. But this crew was war experienced. Their tail gunner spotted something, a shadow moving against the stars. He opened fire, bullets tracing through night like fireflies. Sam jerked the widow left. They see us! Bring us around, fast! Sparks barked. Sam pulled a maneuver most night fighter pilots avoided, a high-speed climbing curve directly over the bomber's path. The G-force pressed them into their seats, the widow groaning from the strain. From above, the bomber looked fragile, slow, unaware of the predator circling above like a hawk. Sam dove. The widow thundered downward, cannons hammering. A string of fire tore across the bomber's fuselage. One of its engines exploded with a muffled boom. The plane suddenly erupted into flame, bright, violent, too enormous to hide. Even Japanese ships far below saw the glowing fireball descending like a dying star. 2 bombers gone. 54 minutes of hunting. Lawson tapped the dash. "Night Mercy," he whispered. "You're earning your name." Sparks didn't laugh. He didn't blink. His radar was glowing again. "Sam, this one's bigger." Bigger meant one thing, a Japanese Navy G-4M Betty bomber. Faster. Longer ranged. More dangerous. The Betty was notoriously flammable, nicknamed the one-shot lighter by American pilots, but catching it wasn't easy. And this one wasn't alone. "I'm reading a second signal." "Same heading. Same speed." "A formation?" Sam asked. "No. Too far apart. But going same direction." 2 bombers in the dark. Sam didn't hesitate. "Then we take them one at a time." The first Betty didn't stand a chance. Its crew was alert, scanning the sky with nervous hands and strained eyes, but they had no radar, only darkness and faith. Lawson and Sparks had radar, silencers, black paint, and instinct. The Widow crept up behind them like a living shadow. Sparks watched the radar trace slide into firing range. 500 yards, 300, 200. Sam fired. The cannons chewed through the Betty's tail section and ignited its left fuel tank. The bomber burst into an inferno of orange flames, lighting the sky. The heat of the explosion shimmered even inside the P-61's cockpit. As the burning aircraft spiraled downward, Sam banked hard to avoid a wing that tore away into the night. 3 bombers gone. 70 minutes? Sparks wiped sweat from his forehead. "Sam, the 4th one is changing course. Possibly saw the explosion. Running? Looks like it." Sam grinned. "Good. I'd hate to chase a coward who stays still." What happened next would later become the heart of squadron legend. The 4th bomber, a G-4M with an experienced crew, was weaving erratically once it saw the glow of the previous Betty's demise. Their pilot threw the bomber into evasive maneuvers unusual for such a large aircraft. Tight turns, shallow dives, climbing arcs, desperate attempts to lose a shadow they could not see. Sam pursued. He flicked off all cockpit lights. The Widow became completely dark inside, illuminated only faintly by radar. "That's too risky," Sparks warned. "If we lose visual." "I'm not using visual," Sam said. "I'm using you." Sparks swallowed hard and fixed his eyes on the glowing green screen. "Adjust 2 degrees right, keep altitude, they're diving, throttle up to 260, closing to range." The bomber crew was panicking. Their tail gunner fired blind arcs of tracer rounds into the night. The Japanese pilot banked right, then dove again, but the P-61 matched them turn for turn, maneuver for maneuver. It moved like a shadow glued to their tail. They thought the Americans had fielded multiple fighters. They believed they were surrounded. One of the radio men kept shouting into his headset, "Too many! Too many! They are everywhere!" But there was only one Black Widow. Sparks' voice steadied. "Sam, we're right on top of them. Give it to them." Sam angled the Widow slightly downward and fired a long, precise burst. Sparks watched glowing shapes on radar blur. The bomber shuddered. Smoke trailed from its right side. Then, as Sam pulled alongside briefly, the Betty's fuselage cracked, flames rippling along its spine before consuming the entire aircraft. The 4th bomber fell, breaking apart in midair before hitting the sea in fragments. 80 minutes. 4 bombers gone. The sky returned to silence. Sam finally exhaled. The hunting adrenaline drained out of his muscles. Sparks leaned back, hands trembling slightly, a man not afraid of machines but humbled by what they could unleash. "Sam," he whispered, "Japan is going to think an entire squadron hit them." Sam smiled faintly in the darkness. "Good. Let them fear shadows." When they returned to Leyte, the tower crew had no idea what they had done. Even ground officers assumed they'd only been out for reconnaissance. But when Sam shut down the engines and Sparks climbed out with shaking legs, the crew chief walked over, expression confused. He held a clipboard. "You guys were gone barely more than an hour." Sam nodded. "A little over 80 minutes." The crew chief frowned. "And you're claiming 4?" Sam shrugged. "The sky was generous." The debrief stunned the officers. Radar logs confirmed the contacts. Navy ships reported seeing distant fireballs. A reconnaissance patrol later found floating debris consistent with 4 separate bombers. In Tokyo and Formosa, Japanese officers were furious and terrified. Reports from bomber crews suggested they had been attacked by multiple fighters, perhaps 6 or 7. They wrote in official logs that new American night squadrons have arrived, and that aggressive coordinated interception tactics were employed. They could not believe that only one aircraft had hunted and destroyed 4 bombers in such a short time. For the rest of the war, rumors spread among Japanese aviators: an American night demon, a black aircraft that could see in the dark, that struck without warning, without sound, without mercy. Some crews altered routes just to avoid the sectors where the Widow had operated. But for Sam and Sparks, the mission was something more personal. It was proof that war wasn't always won by larger numbers or louder machines. Sometimes, in the deepest silence of night, victory came from patience, precision, and the partnership of 2 men, one who hunted with his eyes, and one who hunted with the quiet glow of a screen. Years later, when Lawson wrote a brief account of the night, he began with a single sentence. "We were not heroes, we were shadows, and the shadows did what the daylight could not." And that was the truth Japan could never believe, that one P-61, flown by 2 determined airmen, had hunted them alone, and in only 80 minutes, erased 4 bombers from the sky.